Freedom for the wolves has often meant death to the sheep. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today revolves around the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. Tomorrow, the Gazette on the 20th Amendment to the Constitution will be tabled in Parliament, and within a course of 4 weeks, we will have a new amendment to the Constitution, which will be dubbed as the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. To discuss all this and more, we've invited 3 guests to our studios this evening as well. Joining us tonight on the show is Dr. Suren Raghavan, Member of Parliament of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. Nice to have you on the show, Dr. Suren. Also joining us tonight on the show is Iran Wickramaratne, Member of Parliament of the Samaga Jana Balawega. Nice to have you on board as well, Iran. Also joining us tonight on the show is Dr. Anil Jayanta, a representative of the National People's Power. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening on the show. Let's start off tonight's show with Dr. Suren Raghavan, Member of Parliament of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. What is the thinking behind the government, Dr. Suren, when they brought in the 20th Amendment to the Constitution as a gazette, which was printed already and will be tabled tomorrow, after such a resounding victory at the last general election? What was the thinking?
Thank you for inviting me. I think this is the first time I'm participating in this program, so I'm getting familiarized with this structure that you all have. To begin with, I know media, to begin with, some of your words were not correct. Let me correct you first. It's not going to be dumped, right? 20th Amendment is going to be adopted in a parliament, debated, and opposition will be given proper chances. And then the media like you will be already starting to critique. So I think those loaded words will show some direction. Secondly, I don't know how you got this 4 weeks thing, because from tomorrow onward, the Supreme Court, any citizen in this country has a right to go, and I'm sure all these opposition party and concerned NGOs will go in front of the temple of the law and ask for their grievances to be redressed.
And there's 1 week.
So should the courts take it, it won't be 4 weeks, as you say. So
there'll be 3 weeks where you can debate this, and
if the Supreme Court takes it, if there is a leave to grant, if the Supreme Court takes it, it's up to the courts, the honourable courts, to decide. So it will continue. So I don't know.
The Supreme Court has to make a decision within 3 weeks, Dr. Raghavan.
No, if it goes to Supreme Court, I don't think we can dictate. The Supreme Court can decide, the 5-bench or 7-bench. So I think we must be careful when we use these words, how we are trying to frame. I'm not saying that you are framing. Unconsciously, this is what media does. I mean, we are all in this media business now. So going back to your original question, number one, I'm not a constitutional expert. So I think I'm sitting in the wrong seat here. But since I've arrived and then got to know it's going to be about 20th A, let me also just say that constitutional changes in any country are required for one reason. It is to fulfill the aspirations of people, the majority of the people, who goes through a democratic process, and to make those institutional and other changes, first we must make the constitutional change. It is, I think, Charles Taylor, the Canadian political philosopher, asked the question, in all political arenas, there is one single question that we need to ask. That is, how shall we live then tomorrow? And that question encapsulates all other aspirations. So right now, on the 16th of November last year, there was a political will that was democratically and fairly. There were no accusations on that elections processes. And then again, it was reconfirmed on the 5th of August. The majority of these people spoke. Now, I know across the board, we may not like, some of us may not like, those liberal-minded people may not like this nationalistic flavor that came out of the ground as we see today. I mean, that's a reality. I mean, I wouldn't be shy to say what was stamped very strongly on the 5th of August was Sinhala Buddhist political aspirations. And I'm willing to recognize that. As a political scientist, I need to ask the question. The peripheral aspirations that travels to the center and speaks. What happened before that was very interesting. A war hero like President Mahinda Rajapaksa was defeated at an election. And this was the truth in this country's history, recent history. He was, and his party was defeated, or made to defeat, as they would say, his party members would say, on the basis of some of the democratic nuances were not carried out. Right? That's a prima facie argument. But what happened soon after the so-called January 8th revolutions, as some would like to call, and the good governance, Yahapalana 5 years, I think the people in this country came to conclusion that all what Yahapalana meant was not done. In fact, the opposite of Yahapalana promises.
So do you think that bringing forth a 20th amendment to the Constitution is going to arrest the situation in terms of addressing the grievances of the public at large?
Public at large is the sense. The 5th August mandate for the majority of the Sinhala Buddhist people, and maybe other few areas, were to have a strong and very strong government that would not bow down to, number one, forces from outside, like what we've seen already, forces from Europe or forces from across the sea.
No, but are you trying
a strong
to say,
nationalistic government they want.
So you're
a
trying to
government
say
that would address.
But are you trying to say, Dr. Raghavan, that the 20th amendment of the Constitution is to build a strong government?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, what else otherwise? Because as this government with even 2/3 majority tries to move forward the job of governing, it is understood certain elements are not correct.
So you're saying
the
that the governance...
The 19th amendment was brought in, I think at that time Honorable Iran was in the parliament. Most of them voted with the promise of another amendment coming. That's the 20th, what they meant was. So that didn't come through for various reasons. The mismarriage between SLP-led president and UNP-led
very quickly, Dr. Suren, before I move to Iran, because predominantly if you see the activities of the Rajapaksa regime over the last few years, if you take a look at the last few decades, alone, since 2010 to 2020, you see the 18th amendment to the Constitution was being tabled in Parliament. And majority of the members who are now in Parliament also voted in favor of the 18th amendment to the Constitution.
Exactly.
And then came the 19th amendment to the Constitution, and majority of the members who voted in favor of the 18th amendment to the Constitution voted in favor of the 19th amendment to the Constitution as well. And the very people who voted for the 19th amendment to the Constitution is going to vote for the 20th amendment to the Constitution as well this time around, because it's not going to be Gotabaya Rajapaksa who is going to be voting for the 20th amendment to the Constitution. It's going to be President Mahinda Rajapaksa and the 146 members of the Sri Lanka Pojana Peramani, including the 5 members who would all support the SLPP. Given that fact, do you still think that this is about making the government strong and making the governance structure strong in the country?
2/3 majority is a mandate given by the people to be in the parliament and do parliamentary affairs by the people who are elected and send their representative. But that does not mean that the executive and the legislature has enough freedom and power without changing the constitution. But I mean, they can't do what they want to do just because they have 2/3. So now they have the 2/3, people have mandated, and they go in front of the parliament and ask, okay, these are some of the changes that we would like. I mean, again and again, it's very clearly said that the constitution that we are trying, the changes that we are trying to make are temporary. They are going to be an overall discussion nationwide. There are going to be substantial consultative. Of course, I know you smile, right?
I'm smiling now because
no, that's okay. Let's talk politics. Let's talk politics, my brother. Let's talk politics. So the problem is not you. I should get smiling because
I'm smiling because of a reason. I'll tell you why I'm smiling. I think I need to tell you why I'm smiling. I'm smiling because when the 19th amendment to the Constitution was brought, they said that there'll be another change to the Constitution, which was pioneered by the JVP at that time. The 18th amendment to the Constitution, when it was brought, they said that there'll be another amendment. But never have we seen these amendments coming through.
Right. I mean, it's not now. from 1994.
So then how come you're saying so
Exactly.
clearly
So
and so
there is a history
vocally
in
that
this
this is going to
country.
happen in the country, that the 20th Amendment
There is
or
a-
the 21st Amendment is going to come into play?
There is a history in this country. Sorbonne educated Mrs. Chandrika Bandaranaike campaigned in 94. I was part of that campaign. She went all the way, even deep south to Mathura. She said she will take away and abolish the executive presidency. And I could not believe as honest a person as Mrs. Chandrika Bandaranaike promising that. But what we saw was different. So what happens is in this country's history will naturally generate that kind of smile and mistrust when somebody says there are going to be a change.
I stick to my code, Dr. Raghavan. When I started off, I said freedom for the wolves has often meant death to the sheep. So we have to decide who are these people who are going to be burdened with the 20th Amendment of the Constitution. I leave it at that. I want to move my attention to Mr. Iran Vikramratne, Member of Parliament of the Samagra Jana Balawegya. Iran, the SJB, are you all against the 20th Amendment in full, or you all like certain sections of the 20th Amendment to the Constitution?
Thank you for inviting me to be here. I would say it differently. I would ask myself the question, why do we need 20 at all? Because if you look at it, since 1978, we've had a presidential system. Some countries have presidential systems, some countries have parliamentary systems with a prime minister and a cabinet. Some countries have somewhat of a mixed system. And there are countries which have had strong government with a presidential system, and there are countries which have had strong government with a mixed system, and there are countries which have had strong government with a Westminster kind of system. So I often wonder what this huge debate is about the Constitution itself, and then linking it to strong government. The strong government just doesn't come only from a constitution. The other thing is, if you look at the argument today that we need strong government, well, we have a president, we have a president who is backed, they claim, with a 2/3 majority in parliament. The president has his own brother as a prime minister of the country. I mean, I can't think of any situation in the world where you could have things going your way and really being strong. So why do you need actually a further amendment? And then I'm also wondering, because in the president's policy statement, he said, I want to bring a new constitution. And if he wants to bring a new constitution, that's fine. I think I'm saying go through the process, bring a new constitution. Why do you want to actually push through an amendment like this? So despite the cry since 1978 by the opposition that we don't want the presidential system, we need to get rid of it, and as Dr. Suren Raghavan said, there were presidential candidates who went about saying we'll abolish the system, from Chandrika Kumaranatunga, Mahinda Rajapaksa, and so forth. And they never abolished it. It was actually in 2015 that we actually retained the presidential system, and we brought some checks and balances on the presidential system. So what I think really the issue is, often we try to hide behind the law. We try to hide behind constitutions and the law. I think our issue often is really people. People have not really executed their responsibilities properly, and then we hide behind the law and say the law needs to be changed to do A, B or C. I think Sri Lanka has a constitution, it has a tried and tested system, it has its pluses and minuses, right? And then we look at some problem or the other or an event, and then we start blaming the law. So my view is, right, that we really don't need to tinker with the 20th Amendment at this point in time. The government, as it's stated in its policy statement, then should go through the process of actually presenting a new constitution.
Aaron, when you look at the statements that are coming out from the government ranks, one of the reasons they put forward is the April 21st attacks. This happened as a result of the 19th Amendment of the Constitution, because there was no one who was taking the ultimate responsibility, and we even see this happening now at the Presidential Commission of Inquiry, inquiring against the April 21st attacks. Responsibility lies where? Is that a fair argument that can be brought forward? Because of the 19th Amendment of the Constitution, the governance structure in the country somewhat collapsed.
I think it's absolute nonsense, right? When the Easter attacks happen, it doesn't matter which government is in power, right? That government has to take responsibility, because after all, there's a loss of life, right? And those who hold authority have to take responsibility. I was a part of that government, and therefore our government has to take responsibility for the Easter attacks. Now the stage is where we are going more deeply into it to see which individuals in that government should actually take responsibility. And the Presidential Commission, at the moment, there are lots of hearings there, lots of evidence being given before it, and I'm hoping sooner or later that it will actually translate into a more legal process. People in this country are sick and tired of presidential commissions. Lots of commissions come, even the reports are not often made public. There have been reports over the last 25 years, often not made public. There's not been any follow-through. So I think we should pick it up and really try to move it into a judicial process.
But
your question, if I can just tell you, answer your question. Your question is, did the 19th Amendment have anything to do with the Easter attacks? It had absolutely nothing to do with the Easter attacks.
The 19th Amendment of the Constitution brought forward the Constitutional Council.
Yeah.
The Constitutional Council recommended the name of the then IGP, Pooja Jayasundara, to be appointed as the IGP of the country. Now, one of the allegations leveled by the government is the fact that they, based on the 19th Amendment of the Constitution, you can't remove an IGP who has made a mistake after being appointed to that post. So that does make sense, isn't it?
I think this government is very good at misleading people and often using the media to mislead people. There's no truth in that at all. First thing is, right, when the Easter attacks happened, right, the head of the forces was the president, right, the government, right, all the intelligence services reported to the president. There was a Security Council. The Defense Ministry was with the president. Those in authority have to take responsibility. What does the Constitutional Council and the commissions do? It does, this one important thing that it does is, and maybe in the next round I will elaborate on that, is try to make sure that when appointments are made, that fit and proper people are appointed. The nominations of the highest positions in the country, highest positions, including the IGP, nominations always come, right, from the head of state in most of the high positions. Then the commissions or the Constitutional Council basically does a check, and the check is whether the person is fit and proper. It can only accept or reject. It cannot nominate, it cannot appoint. The president appoints. So if the wrong person is appointed, everybody takes responsibility. But specifically going to your question.
But can he be removed?
Specifically going to your question, he can be removed. Right? I have here the Removal of Officers Procedure Act number 5 of 2002. Right? This act specifically talks about, right, two positions, the Attorney General and the Inspector General of Police. Two positions specifically, and how they can be removed. And they can be removed. This specifically says that if basically if the speaker entertains a notice of resolution signed by not less than 1/3 of Parliament, that's 75 people. After that, there is an inquiry.
Very quickly, Ran.
After that,
we will come to that very quickly. I want to move to
Sure.
Dr. Anil Jayant as well, but very quickly, I want to ask you one final question. Do you think that the IGP deserved to be removed after the April 21st attacks? If this article that you just showed right now is valid, why wasn't he removed from that position back then?
there's no question about this not being valid, because this is the law of the country. Right? This is the
Why
law of
wasn't
the
he removed
country.
if that's the case?
Yeah, so this is the law of the country, right? And therefore, right, the political authority, right, should have moved quickly, right? If the IGP was responsible, should move quickly. If the IGP is not responsible, then those who are standing above the IGP should take responsibility
Right.
for.
Thank you very much, Iran. I now want to move to Dr. Anil Jayant, the National People's Power representative tonight on the show. Dr. Anil Jayant, the leader of the NPP, that's Anil Kumar Dissanayake, has been very vocal about the 20th Amendment to the Constitution when he was questioned about the Gazette being tabled in Parliament tomorrow. He very clearly says that no major changes can be entertained in Parliament when this has been gazetted. The fundamentals of the draft bill will remain as it is. And he also says that going to courts does not necessarily mean that the legality of the draft bill will only be questioned and not the ethical background of the draft bill will be questioned. What are your thoughts on this?
Actually, it's like this. We would choose what course of actions that we take against 20th Amendment. Actually, what Anil Kumar Dissanayake, our leader of NPP, so highlighted the danger of 20th Amendment from two fronts. Number one is from the democratic ruling, because either we talk about 20th A, 19th A in Constitution, so any other things. So when we live in a country is ruled by a government. So then of course that is the representation. So the agency is automatically created there. So once the agency is created, so what is likely to happen, the mandate or the power vested with these agents could be used for the benefits of personal gain. So it is likely, because we are not angels, so we are humans. So that is where we need to have good governance. How we could implement good governance systems, there are many things we can talk about, but basically the transparency and accountability have to be established. With 20th Amendment, what is going to happen is to create a power concentration within selected people. So it is dangerous, because we are just moving towards a democracy. Now with the 20th A, we are just going back. So in one of the recent article released by the Transparency International, talk about the case of Colombia. So Colombia post-COVID situation highlighted three things. So one is the concentration of power, because in the backdrop of post-COVID, they did to some extent the concentration. Now even after that they were doing. So here also the same thing is happening. That is number one. Second aspect is the misuse of funds used in the name of these kind of situations, like whatever the funds generated for the purpose of relief benefits for the COVID. The third one is also very important one, but to great extent we are ignorant of this. That is the environmental issues. That means like this particular economic model tries to gain a quick recovery. In economic language, what they call V-shaped economic recovery. So I think that to some extent our the officials or the politicians may have been, sometimes I don't know whether misguided or must have been the provided with the consultation to go for a V-shaped economic recovery.
No, but Dr. Aljad, you need to be a little bit more precise. When you say power is going to be centralized,
yes,
what do you mean by that? Do you think that the power is going to be centralized, concentrated within the Rajapaksa family based on the 20th Amendment of the Constitution?
No, it is not an issue. No, it is not an issue of Rajapaksa family. Whoever who come to power and rule the country will have this kind of enormous power. Simply what they can do is they can get away from these checks and balances. Independent commission, so 19 amendments, so though there are like lots of arguments about 19 amendments, but good things are there.
But Dr. Raghavan very clearly says that this is about strengthening the governance structure in Sri Lanka, which collapsed because of the 19th Amendment of the Constitution,
So
which we experienced during the last 4.5 years in the country.
Yeah. How can we strengthen the governance? How can we strengthen a governance by removing a democracy, transparency and accountability? For example, 20th Amendment suggests proposed to take away this audit commission and the procurement commission. So throughout the world nowadays, what is happening, the procurement, the proportion for procurement, public spending is increasing throughout the world.
But Dr. Anil, making the rounds now in social media is a statement that was made by Premnath Sidulawata, who is also a member of the committee appointed by the Prime Minister to look into the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. And he says that development is curtailed because of audit commissions that have been established in the country. Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I do not know. Like, that is that we need to throw this question to the general public. If audit is not there, so that is one of the basic tool that we can have checks and balances. So auditing, independent auditing is then giving an like third party independent opinion about this. So if there is no audit, actually you have the power, you have the resources, then you can do whatever you want. So where is the accountability? If there is no accountability, that's why I just told you, we are not angels. There is a great likelihood that the power would be used to have personal gains and benefits. But one more thing, I just want to add one more point. So meantime, that's why I just told you, the government is facing a kind of economic crisis as of now. So this is not to develop the country or to establish for the benefits of the general public, but to just have a quick recovery from this thing at any expense.
But you can't generalize it, because the 20th Amendment to the Constitution very clearly says only the President's expenses and the Prime Minister's expenses cannot be audited.
Yeah, not only that, within that there are so many other institutions. As I remember, more than 120 institutions also come. Even President, like if the President is highly disciplined or whoever, like ruler, so why is he just afraid of being audited? The auditing is not like a policeman is coming and just checking something. It is a very scientific, systematic process of implementing transparency and accountability. That is very clear.
Thank you very much.
If he's a good, the ruler, so you should allow for this, because these are the fundamental the pillars of the democracy in the world.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anil Jayant, representative of the National People's Power. I open the floor for questions from our journalists. On to my immediate left is law student Sharon Benedict. Nice to have you on board, Sharon. He's also the host of the show Role of Law. And also joining us tonight on the show is Nadeem Majid, as always. Let's start off tonight's show with Sharon.
Thank you very much, Shamir. Dr. Suren Raghavan, my first question is to you. In your opening statement, you said you're not a constitutional law expert, so you don't really want to comment on the substance of this matter. So I'm not going to question you on the substance of this matter, but I'm going to pose a question to you on a certain statement that you made in your opening address on Face the Nation today. You said that the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, or the existing provisions in the Constitution, really didn't allow the President or the government to do what they want to do. And that's why the 20th Amendment to the Constitution was brought. My question to you is very simple. What are these things that the President and the government is planning on doing
That's
with
a very good question that
through the implementation of the 20th Amendment? What can't they do?
What was your name? Sorry, I couldn't catch your name.
Sharon Benedict.
Okay. In 1948, when this country got independence, what was the dollar rate? We have experts here, we have economic experts. What was the dollar to rupee exchange? You tell me. You are a journalist, you said you are a law student or doing masters, right?
That doesn't mean I'm an economic expert.
Oh, exactly. So, when we approach any subject, we need to know the context of the subject and what we are. This is not to defeat you, or me getting defeated, or him putting on the pedestal. We are just talking. As a nation, nations living in this state called Sri Lanka, how we are trying to get out of this, and at least my sons and their sons will live in a more democratic country than what I was born. And that's exactly why I left my academic career, and I was invited and I came. 1948, if you take the UN report, the economic report of 1948 says there were 3 countries, 3 states in entire Asia that were strong enough to run a government. The 3 were Siam, Ceylon and Japan. Siam is Thailand, right? Why is that? These are the only 3 countries had a surplus economy, and payment was done, and even more, right? And that time, the same US dollar was only 2 rupees and 10 cents. Today, you and I know it's, I think, 185 or 86. So what happened? Last 72 years, economic degradation. Today, Bangladesh is the 36th economy in the world, whereas we are either 65th or 66. I don't. I think it's moving almost every quarter. The issue in Sri Lanka, economy, constitution, and all that is related is based. Come back to one epicentric idea about how are we governing and what kind of governance, what kind of state are we interested in making. And I think from the very beginning we pressed the wrong note. If you go to a church, you will know if the orchestra is singing the correct tune because they only press one note in the piano. And we pressed, even pre-independent, the wrong note of ethnicity and ethnic-based politics. And that is why this country, even now, you and I are seated and talking about a 20th Amendment, because we are trying not only to fix the economy, which is now really, really down after and facing the global challenge of COVID-19 and all that, but bringing back a fundamental. Today, the peripheral people, all this time, particularly the last 4.5 years of promise, which was collapsed, had spoken.
Dr.
Now,
Suren
some of
Raghavan,
the
if I can
issues
just
that
interrupt
we
you there
speak-
for 1 second, I feel like you're beating around the bush a
No,
little.
I'm coming. I mean, some of your questions cannot be answered yes or no. Then of
I'm
course
not
you
asking
got
for a yes
you
or
got
no
to go to
answer.
bingo, right?
I'm not asking for a yes or
But
no answer.
here are we talking about a constitution. Here we are talking about a state that was so post-independently promising in the entire, if not entire Asia, but all the post-colonial countries. Sri Lanka and then Ceylon was a model. Now, why are we talking even today, after 3 generations and 3 civil wars, one protracted war in the northern? It is because of our politics went wrong. So how are we trying to get back our politics is listening to the ground. And this time the ground has spoken, though you and I and all of us, or many of us, may not like it.
Dr. Suren,
Dr. Raghavan, the President's manifesto promised the ground. This is the exact wording from the
Saubhagya
Vistas of
Dakma.
Splendor
and Prosperity.
Saubhagya Dakma manifesto. In Sinhalese manifesto, it says, Janatawata vaga kiyana vyavasthawa.
Yes.
I mean, a constitution that is accountable to the people. How can you deliver a constitution that is accountable to the people when you're taking off the accountability measures that were
Very
introduced in
clearly,
this?
the President, even I think yesterday or day before, now I am not the lawyer for the President, I think it is Ali Sabri's job to defend the President as Justice Minister. But I think as going by and looking, I mean, as a journalist asking a question and me responding to that, the President even day before yesterday said, believe in me, I'm not going to cheat you. Now, this country is the urban English-speaking elites have a problem of believing that. Okay, I understand that very well, right? Urban elites
Dr.
have this issue.
Raghavan, as a political scientist, you'll appreciate this. I think it was Jefferson that said, "Let no more be said of confidence in man; instead, bind him by the chains of the
majority
Constitution."
again and again have spoken. Now, are you saying we should not? Because the majority.
What have the majority spoken for?
Majority has spoken that President Gotabaya,
Yeah.
who had no political career before, be elected as the 7th executive president.
On his, would you agree on his manifesto, Saubhagya Dakma, in which he promises,
many parts,
in which he promises, in what one of the things he promises
Now,
is a
finally-
constitution that is accountable to the
Finally,
people.
it's it looks like I'm trying to defend President
The
Gotabaya, who had been defended by again and again nearly 13 million voters of this country.
Dr.
No,
First
I'm not asking you to
November and
defend.
second
Give me a second. Dr. Raghavan, I'm not asking you to defend the president or this thing. What I'm trying to understand, I think what Shalan was asking, we've seen. Okay, let's take examples. Let's listen to the ground and let's see what's happened on the ground since President Gotabaya Rajapaksa became president. They've had to deal with a dire economic situation. Even before, there were steps that were taken by cutting taxes, hoping that it would reinvigorate
Instill,
economic
yeah.
activity. Then you had the pandemic, which maybe put a damp on that plan.
Yeah.
But even in dealing with the pandemic, we've seen strong government
Yes,
in dealing with the pandemic.
absolutely.
So
and Sri
what-
Lanka,
so
Sri
I
Lanka
think-
stands as an Asian model.
Exactly, and this has been
How do you
recognized.
think that came about?
This has been by strong government, and this has been recognized by institutions, including the World Health Organization.
Right.
So my question is, what is? I think what Shalan was asking as well. What is the constitutional impediment to strong government? Because we have a strong government.
No, we don't.
What is the constitutional
No, we
impediment?
don't. We only have the mandate. We have only the mandate that's given to the president. We just have the mandate of the parliamentary election, which almost comes to two-third election first time in this paper. But we still don't have the legal framework to,
But what
to
are the
coincide with that
obstacles?
mandate the people gave, to coincide and parallelly run. Because when we go to the end of the day, it's not the parliament which is, parliament people speak, but we all, the Supreme Court takes as the text of the constitution and says, okay, is it according to this or according to the verbal? So constitution is the absolutely unshaken, I mean you are a lawyer,
But-
unshaken document
I'm
that
not
we go. It's also, if that document has some lacuna, some gaps, so the mandate now is trying to fulfill those temporarily. It is being,
But Dr.
I have no
Arvind,
guarantee to that. I
no,
must
we,
confess
we,
that.
we take the, you heard Dr. Anil Jayantha was talking about the audit. I have a few questions for Dr. Jayantha as well, but just before I move on to Dr. Anil Jayantha, very quickly, I mean, we all work in a private company. You've been in university administration, you've been in provincial administration in Northern Province. Mr. Vikram Ratna is a former banker. Dr. Anil Jayantha also as an academic had been in this thing. We've all been in either institutions or positions where we've been subject to audits.
Yeah.
And I get it. I mean, like private companies, we don't like finance and admin guys. But that doesn't mean that we abolish the finance and admin department.
No, but that's
I mean,
exactly
when you were when you were Northern Province governor, was the audit ever an obstacle to you executing your
Yeah,
duties?
so I take his argument. I mean, I think Honorable Iran kind of supported by his body language. He said, yeah, when you concentrate power on one individual, however great moral that individual can be, there is an absolute danger that he or she may slip. And that is why it's been now been tabled and debated. If the president wanted, with a two-third majority, the very first day of the parliament could have been gazetted, and most probably two-third would have been voted. But now it has been tabled, it's open for discussions, it's open for debate for 1 month, and it's open in front of the Supreme Court. I am sure the opposition party is not going to wait. They are going to go in front of the temple of law and ask redress. So all those mechanisms are there only as a, I mean, this is again, I'm saying I am no constitutional lawyer. I told you, I am now pushed to the deep end, so I have to swim through this.
But
okay?
Dr. Raghavan,
let's
from-
confess. No, I'm saying.
When talking about the nature of our state,
Let's ask, what is it difficult? Let's get into the epicenter. What is it difficult for us, the urban English-speaking, let's not talk about that. No.
If
So
Basil Rajapaksa was so
I
patriotic,
applied and I got it cleared and all that, and then people, media, not your media, other media just made our whole.
but you are very patriotic. We
Yeah,
are not,
and
we are
I-
not questioning
not
about your
patriotic.
integrity. We are not questioning
Not only
about your integrity.
patriotic plus law abiding. The country is.
Not
But therefore,
questioning
the
about
question is not a
Tell
single
me five
person
people.
issue.
No, well, let's talk about 5 people. I think that's a bit too steep. Let me know one person.
Oh,
apart
there are
from
many.
Basil Rajapaksa,
There are many.
who are dual citizens.
Yes, there are many.
Who should be appointed to the post of office in Sri Lanka.
Yes.
Just
There-
name one person.
There are so many.
But rather than one person.
I'm
just asking you
saying,
one person.
let me
apart
ask
from
the
Basil
question
Rajapaksa.
more quantitative, without putting names and faces, more of a qualitative thing. Do you think just because a person having only one single citizenship, that is a Sri Lankan citizenship, he or she is far better, because of same reason that they are holding single citizenship, that they are
Raghavan,
far better
but
than
Dr.
anybody else.
Raghavan, the point is
Right
very
now,
simple.
we have
But-
1 million
But Dr.
diaspora.
Raghavan, you're not getting the point. The point
No,
is
no,
very
no.
simple.
I am getting the point. I'm
Yeah, the
saying I'm
point
not
is-
going to give you that answer that
No,
you are
no,
looking
the point
for.
is, no, the
there are
point
1
is,
million people.
If you are patriotic, if you are a person with integrity, if you love the country so much,
Yes.
why not give up your citizenship in another country
Yeah.
and serve Sri Lanka? And we need, I am 34 years old, I am a future prospect of this country. We have Shalan who's 27 years old. You have
24, Shamir.
24 years old. We have Nadeem who's just past 30 years old as well. We are future prospects of the country.
he looks
We
younger
want
than
people
that.
with integrity. We want people with integrity to
Yeah.
govern the country. And none of the people in the government ranks have an answer for this.
Yeah.
Who are the people who are going to now? I am not questioning your integrity, Dr. Raghavan.
No,
I
no,
know
that's
you are
okay.
a
Because
dual citizen. You
that's
gave it
the-
up because you have want to be in parliament, and
Yeah.
that is a person of integrity,
Yeah.
and that is what a person with integrity would do.
Yeah, yeah.
But when I ask a question from the government ranks, tell
yeah,
me one
for
person
me,
apart from Basil
why I
Rajapaksa,
take,
you all don't
why
have
I
an
don't
answer.
oppose that is this. For me, either you are single citizen or dual citizen or multi-citizen, doesn't matter. It all matters how much you love this country and whether you have a faithful, a moral commitment to this country to take forward.
Right, I
It
want
doesn't
to
matter whether you are multi.
I want to quickly move to Dr. Anindra because
Yeah,
you
because,
interrupted me.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's
Yes, you
what
can
I
finish,
just
Dr. Anindra.
could not complete it.
Yeah.
So that is the fundamental question that we need to ask: what kind of governance we need? So there is an array of governance systems. So now we talk about like top class democracy on one hand. In the meantime, in the world also there are some governance systems where they are just ruled by dictators, and so people also may like just to be ruled and to be commanded, and likewise. So in one of the famous, the recent book written by Professor Yuval Noah Harari, so Homo sapien. So it is not that far in 1960s. So people were battling for their like the farm, the paddy fields, and all these things. 1,000 people were killed through violence. So that is their clan and bands. So they are like not following. That is their New Guinea. They do not respect the democracy. That is what the first we have to ask the general public: what kind of ruling or the government do we need? If we want really a democratic ruling, then there is no point of just talking about these kind of mechanisms and implementation that would really kill the democracy. So otherwise, if you just agree that no, we do not want that, we want something like we want one person, one family, or maybe a dictator, ruler, army, or whatever. So we like it. That is another thing. The problem here is we are talking about super high class democracy, but the action is totally different to that. So that is this duality.
We are looking at
This paradox
now,
is
for
seen.
instance,
Yeah.
post-COVID, the countries,
Yeah.
the recovery rates, if you look at, I think I just saw the Guardian. I thought Iran will talk more on economics because he's a banker and all that, so I was getting.
He just spoke about the audit commissions and how
that's
important
morality of
audits are.
economics. I thought so. The three countries that are in Asia that are recovered are Taiwan, absolutely strong government, and Indonesia, absolutely strong government, even headed by a former. I mean, a few years ago, the country was headed by a general, Bang Bang, and then Vietnam. Taiwan's recovery, the growth rate had fallen only by 0.5. Whereas Spain, which talks about so much of democracy, even federation has 28% minus, negative 28%.
Can I
So
just-
we saw this, we
Dr.
see this.
Raghavan, Taiwan is
Can
a
I just
democracy.
add to his point?
Well,
So
then we are going back to ask what
Yeah.
democracy is.
No,
Let us go there.
I would like to add
But
one
the
more
thing is,
point.
the people
What I'm
vote
saying is
for
this
them.
About this-
neoliberal democratic process which COVID has taken care of right now demands. Sri Lankan voter is not illiterate. I wouldn't say that at all. They are sensitive. They know when the insecurity hits them, when things come close to their door, they want to find out what kind of governance
Dr.
they
Rajat,
want.
yes.
And that's exactly what they have
that's
been.
what I just wanted to, like, strong governance does not mean that the concentration of power or any other structure where the accountability and transparency is not respected. So I would like to say something about Thailand because I just did my higher studies in Thailand. In Thailand, apart from other control mechanisms, they have a very strong independent election commission. So because of that particular election commission, the Thaksin Shinawatra happened to just go away, like he's
Now,
all the
this is about Taiwan, yeah.
civic rights were also given. Actually, the offense. So he was guilty not for many or huge corruption. So he took a particular decision to sell Thai properties or businesses to foreigners. What he did was he did it legally. How? He enacted an act in the parliament whereby he reduced the tax amount that is to be paid to the government. That was legal. But what happened, after 6 months time, he was the first person to sell that. Then the general public or the independent commission sued him, saying that you guys, hey, you did it, you enacted this act 6 months before with the prior intention of doing this thing, as a result government lost. So that was the...
Dr. Jayantha, I think Thailand is not the ideal
what I was just
example
telling.
to like a democratic...
No, what I'm just telling.
That was immediately followed by, maybe it was
course.
the independent, that was immediately
Still,
followed by a
even
military
now,
coup.
I'm telling you, I'm not saying that, so that should be taken as an example. I'm telling
He's saying even
with
among
this,
them they were able to change.
yeah,
That's what he's
I'm
trying.
just telling you, even with this all, even now, this is run by no junta. Even with this situation, this independent commission and all the mechanisms have not been abolished.
The
So that
mechanisms
is
are
why
functional.
general public is coming forward. So nowadays also there's a struggle in Thailand. So they are coming forward, they ask for the democracy and good governance. It is not that easy for any ruler to do or do the ruling as their wish, the element wishes. Even they have lots of power, as long as there are good mechanisms, especially for accountability and transparency, have been established.
Mr. Vikramaratne, the space that the SJB will have to participate in the debate in Parliament and to really, let's say, even change the 20th Amendment into something that will, let's say, uphold notions of transparency and accountability is very limited within Parliament. What is the Samaggi Jana Balawegaya doing to muster public support? I know that you just mentioned that you've been visiting hundreds of villages over the weekend and you've been meeting people and speaking to them about these issues. But aside from that, as a political party, as the main opposition political party, what is the SJB doing?
Yeah, I will come to your question, but before that, there were two comments that Dr. Raghavan made, which I like to. He said, something on the economy, and that's why I talked about the audit processes. There's another point I would like to make on the economy, that in the 19th Amendment, there was a procurement commission that was put. In our simple word, I would call that a tender commission, because the word tender is understood a lot more than the word procurement. If we have to really face it, we have to be honest with ourselves, right? We have a lot of corruption in this country. And you go to get your house plan passed, you have to go to the local authority. There are lots of delays there. Lots of people come and complain that they cannot get it actually done. They have to go to other government officers. They come and complain about, even having to deal even sometimes with the police authorities, the traffic authorities, local government, Now, these are to do with government officials, but I won't blame only government officials. I would ask people anywhere, raise your hands if you haven't given a bribe. So it's not a case of saying they are corrupt and we are not corrupt, because there are givers and takers. Then large government tenders, we hear often, right, where highways were made, right, and the per kilometer cost has been twice, thrice. The University of Moratuwa has often spoke on that issue, and the information is available. We've heard it about aircrafts, procurement of aircrafts in this country. And we are hearing it now about turmeric, basically. We heard it earlier about smuggling going on between our neighbor and here, in the past and so forth. So this corruption is endemic in the system, right? And we can take two views about this. One is we just got to get our job done, therefore we pay it. And we're losing hope. But there are countries which have dealt with it effectively, right, and got near zero corruption, right? Now the Procurement Commission was brought in the 19th Amendment, right, was basically to look at these tenders, right, and to look at bribery and corruption. It was to monitor, to report, to investigate. Now there is a problem with some of the commissions in the 19th Amendment. Though the frameworks were in place, there were no votes in Parliament in terms of money given, resources given. Furthermore, to make those commissions effective, now when it came to the right to information, there was a right to information law. Some of the others didn't have the necessary laws in place or the necessary gazettes in place spelling out the processes.
Iran, you need to also tell the program as well as the viewers, why did the government, was it lack of funds that they didn't strengthen those good-looking institutions, or was it a lack of political culture, or we were just experimenting? I think that will just put
No, I
good light.
I think everybody was agreed at that point in time in terms of the principle and why they are
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah.
And I think there was no argument across the board, across parliament, when they came and voted for it. People were
Yeah.
agreed on it,
We saw
right?
that, yeah.
Right. So certainly it failed. It failed in terms of execution and in terms of leadership. It
Exactly.
failed. There was also a technical problem. Some of these commissions, right, from the Constitutional Council, the chairman of the commission was the speaker itself. And the speaker is not a part of the executive. The speaker doesn't, issue gazettes and things like that. So there were some legal and technical limitations as well, which needed to be corrected. So,
Mr. Wickramaratne,
yeah.
just a maybe a fairly difficult question for you to answer. You were the State Minister of Finance
Yeah.
when Mr. Mangala Samaravira was the Cabinet Minister
Yeah.
of Finance. Now, one of the biggest obstacles, because we know that in 2018 or 2017, the National Procurement Commission did publish a draft set of guidelines, but this overlapped with some of the functions of the actual Ministry of Finance, which is publishing procurement guidelines. But as the State Minister of Finance and Mr. Mangala Samaravira, despite his claim to be a progressive leader, there was no initiative that was taken from those in charge of the subject of finance, yourself and Mr. Samaravira, to correct this imbalance between the Independent Procurement Commission and the Finance Ministry. But your party is now arguing for retaining the Procurement Commission, which since its inception was a lame duck.
Yeah, I don't think we should get confused between bad implementation and good law. There's a good law. Yes, if there's bad implementation, we should correct the implementation of it. And that's what I was admitting to. That resources were not voted in, the new laws were not brought in to strengthen it, gazettes were not published, and all that. I agree with it. I would say this.
Like also like any other government, they were also interested in
Yeah.
securing power. Like for instance, now I had talked to him. Sorry if I'm just going to be contributing your idea. Gamperaliya project. Gamperaliya project, 85 billion rupees were set aside as according to the published information. But the Gamperaliya went directly to villages to fund those village projects. But we know what happened in the Northern Province. Northern Province needed the most important, because 1.4 million people are in the Northern Province. 700,000 live in the Jaffna district, highly populated, but only 2% of the people have potable, clean drinking water. Repeatedly appealed to those ministers, and particularly this minister that you mentioned. But we need 2 billion rupees to finish that report. But that didn't come, but they went around and distributed those funds. So we can keep blaming, and I don't like to do that.
But Dr. Raghavan, I mean, those are the mistakes of
Exactly.
the Yahapal
So
administration
I
for
mean,
which they were voted out, let's
yes,
say.
exactly. So
But
people saw that.
is the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna going to go ahead and make those same mistakes? Is this 20th Amendment at the end of the day,
Yeah.
isn't it just a power grab?
I don't think so. Right now, the world has come to, and Sri Lanka in that global crisis had come to, I mean, as a person teaching, learning democratic politics, my area is contemporary politics. My PhD is in politics and religion, right, particularly Buddhism. And so I do have this template that we have about ideal political situation of any country like Sri Lanka. But right now, it looks like the people in the periphery, particularly people not that who eats Coca-Cola and eats pizza, but people who are really walking barefoot, wearing sarong in the Gramia area, needing this. And they are saying, we have given you the power, we have voted you in, just deliver what we want. So now it's up to the center of the government, after the center of the government by President and Prime Minister, and we all can have, like we had
so-
earlier.
But Dr.
I was
Raghavan,
saying
you
that
still
you are
haven't told us
implementing-
what the
Naresh,
constitutional impediment is to accomplishing
Dr.
that.
Raghavan, do you think that you are implementing the manifesto of the president? Is that what you all are doing right now?
Absolutely, I thought
So the manifesto also clearly states that fertilizer will be given free for all. And this was one of the election promises made by
When was
the
this election
president.
mandate written? Tell me this. Did you know that there is something going to happen like COVID-19 and take the world over? I mean, even countries like United States, which talks about the strongest government, strongest army in the world, strongest executives in the
So
world.
you're saying
So-
in light of COVID-19,
Yes.
let's put aside development for a moment. Let's pause that for a minute.
Yeah.
And let's bring in a constitutional amendment because that is the need of the hour right now. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, what I'm saying is, so all these promises that were written and planned out had world, entire world, head down.
Because you know, as a political strategist and also as an individual who has done his PhD in politics as well as religion, you would very clearly know that over the last few decades, election manifestos have been
Absolutely, written
tabled
and
by-
torn and then destroyed and
absolutely,
disturbed.
and then
all that.
suddenly cherry picking takes place
Yeah.
by certain
So,
political
I
parties
am
based
actually
on
asking
their
you,
political agenda.
Having done that, all that, how are you picking up that again and showing up? That's not
So-
forward. I mean, I think we are taking his time. I'm taking.
No,
sorry,
that's
his
okay,
time.
that's okay. You can always respond.
So
Doctor.
what I'm saying is, right now we are at the stage of a double jeopardy. One is a country handed over with absolute insecurity in terms of national security and social security, financial security, and it added only a global health insecurity to us. For us to come out, right now, Iran, is it 60 billion that our debts are? 60 billion US dollars total? Like the foreign we have to pay.
It's more than that.
More than that.
Okay.
It's about 14 trillion rupees.
Yeah.
Rupees, no, I'm sorry, 60 billion dollars, I thought, right?
14
Roughly
trillion
around
rupees.
seven-
would
So,
work out
so
to-
we are one of those countries which
more than that.
had
Little
to
under
pay
80, yeah.
the interest
Little under
terms
100%.
more than our GDP.
Yeah.
Or so I'm not sure of those numbers, but we are in political turmoil. We are possibly in political tilting. We need to straighten this. If not, whatever the recovery we had from COVID-19 will be washed
How is
off.
reimposing the president's immunity
Yeah.
help that?
Now, yeah, president's immunity is something completely different from what you and I are right now engaged.
No,
with.
I'm
That
talking about
is-
20th Amendment
that-
to the Constitution.
Yeah, that 20th Amendment has so many aspects.
because
No, so you
Dr.
can't jump
Raghavan-
from one to
Dr.
the other.
Raghavan- no, Dr. Raghavan,
Put
you
me
speak-
on, put me on light. Put
No,
me on spot
so-
in one
so-
one
but
point.
I just wish that your 20th Amendment to the Constitution only spoke about one point and not a lot
No,
of
no, we'll
points.
talk about. We'll just finish
Yeah.
this. We'll
So-
finish this.
So how is that? Because you speak about economic insecurity, you speak about national security,
Yeah.
you speak about how important as a government you all have to bring forth all that.
Yeah.
I agree, no problem at all. But how is the president's immunity being reimposed?
Yeah, I
Help
think that will
cause-
be one of the strong points the opposition will take up. I think coming few weeks, and the president has promised to listen to that debate.
No, because
And
the government is of the
what I
opinion.
really feel is that
Yeah.
the government which just won its mandate in unprecedented manner would not go ahead and jeopardize. If the voice is very clear in the parliament, outside parliament,
But-
through media,
But I think
there
Dr.
is more
Raghavan,
than enough
Dr. Raghavan,
room to
probably
listen
you
to
are
that.
not privy to the information that's happening in the cabinet because you're just a backbench MP.
Yes, I
but the
I
talk
fully
of the town
confess
right
that
now,
fact.
the talk of the town right now is the fact that when this was discussed, the 20th amendment to the draft bill was discussed.
You seem to be in the front bench because you hear more than me.
Absolutely, talk about it. As journalists, if we are not in the front bench, all people will be at the lurch, thinking as to what they will be doing in the country.
Yeah.
So it's very
But
important.
of course,
at least the
you know,
media
all media
having
agencies
a-
are profit
having-
making, no?
No, at least
Including your agency is
least
profit
the
making.
Government would be more like that. Profit making.
Hey, don't be fool.
No, no,
Don't
no,
fool
no,
yourself.
but
This is
the
not
question
BBC.
is- no, but the
This
question
is a
is- but the
profit
question
making
is,
agency
when
which makes
individuals
profit,
like
and you speak for
Vasudevan
agencies
Nayaka
profit making.
brought
they
in the
have an audit
opposition at the
too.
cabinet meeting.
Exactly.
When Uday
We
Gammam
get
brought in opposition
Yeah.
against the 20th Amendment to the Constitution, saying that the National Audit Commission should be there.
Yeah.
When individuals of that sort, even Vimal Veeravansa, very vociferously,
I started
vocally-
saying that there is an internal debate already, but you are not listening to me.
Still for all, the government decided to go ahead without
We are not sure.
amending.
We are going to
Without
debate. It's going to be
amending the
open.
20th Amendment to the draft
Some of
bill.
those issues will be really sharply debated, and there are 4
Because
weeks to come.
Parliament can't make major changes, Dr. Raghavan.
Yeah, Mr. Vikramatne, this is, I mean, if there's one thing in the 20th Amendment that, let's say, I agree with, that is the provision that has been introduced that major changes cannot be made to bills once they are in committee stage, because from past experience. But the thing is that in itself is a bit of a lame duck provision to have in the constitution, because it's not enforceable, because if parliament this thing, what you're going to do, there's no post enactment judicial review. Now this is already an issue. The bill is going to be tabled in parliament tomorrow. There is already a standing order of parliament which says that you cannot make substantial changes to bills in committee stage. It's written, it's in the standing orders of parliament. I'm not sure exactly which standing order it is. I think it is 4856. I remember because it was very clearly violated when the Provincial Council Election Amendment Act was introduced in 2017.
If it is necessary, sorry, before he comes in, I'm saying we just made one such change, a questioning time of the MPs. Right now we have 147, and then we had to divide this 60-40 time belt.
So
just last week, Friday, we just met and sat with the speaker, and the opposition members were there, elected opposition members were there. So I'm not sure, I'm new to the parliament, so I will not pretend as if I know everything, right? We fought, actually I fought for the opposition side and said we should have this questioning time, particularly style, so that the democratic space is not limited, but it kind of enhanced. Otherwise it looks like we got the mandate and they are just pulling through. So at committee stage we can. It's not exactly what you are saying. We cannot make any changes.
No,
but
you can make
changes can be made.
You can't
your
make
question
changes.
about the spirit of this thing, I'm
No,
agreeing with you.
you can't make
The spirit, I mean the spirit I agree
maybe
with you.
Mr. Vikramatne being
Okay,
more
before
experienced can
You
can
have more
this thing.
experience.
Yeah,
so-
before I get to that, because you asked me so many questions,
Yeah.
if I get to your last question, let me just
Yeah.
clarify a few things. First thing I want to correct is on the Procurement Commission, that was agreed, that was the right way to go about it, given the background I described on corruption. I also admitted that on the implementation there are issues, and I want to make it absolutely clear that the Finance Minister, Mangala Samaravira, would have certainly supported anything like that, and there was no issue about it. But certainly there were issues and leadership issues in actually getting it implemented. The other thing that Dr. Raghavan said earlier is that, which also I want to come in before coming to your question, was that he said that he did not see any issue with dual citizens. Now my view is this: there is a huge number of Sri Lankans living overseas, and lots of them are dual citizens. Actually they have a big contribution they can make to this country. They can invest, they have technology, they have the dollars, they have the knowledge, they can come here, they can own land. There's so many things that they could do. But there are certain areas of governance in which I think that we must make sure that there is no conflict of interest. Now the often used example is the dual citizenship of the United States of America, because the oath of allegiance in the United States of America very clearly sets out that it has to take precedence over other countries, because it clearly says I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by law, right? So there is, and you are putting a person, if you put that person in the presidency or in an executive position in the cabinet, we can have a conflict of interest. So my view is this, that when it comes to the separation of powers, that is the executive, the legislature and the judiciary, right, that we need to have that separation of powers, and let's not have any conflicts. Let's make sure that we have Sri Lankans. Everybody overseas, living overseas in the diaspora, they are welcome back here, even to occupy those positions. That is what Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa did, renounced his citizenship and he took office, and I think there should be no exception on that. It's not that they are not welcome, they are more than welcome, but they have to basically renounce that citizenship. I'm glad that Dr. Raghavan has done that. I hope others will follow. We shouldn't leave room for any conflict of interest. Coming to your specific question, is that the 20th Amendment is actually being tabled in Parliament tomorrow, the first reading. And we know that there are lots of issues with this, lot of different issues. Now you take the urgent bill provision, for example, right? Why do we need it? Right? Many countries, we legislatures, we pass the law. Citizens have no right for any post-enactment judicial review. Absolutely no right. In India they have the right, in the US they have the right, but in Sri Lanka they don't have the right. But we had a small window. The small window is in the bill stage, in the pre-enactment stage, right? What are we doing now? We are depriving the citizen of that right by the urgent bail provision, because only the president can go to the Supreme Court and actually ask for an opinion. And even for that, it's only 24 hours. If it's a complex legal issue, in this country, it's a known fact that if you have a case, it takes 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. In my weekend rounds this past weekend, somebody told me that they have been in court for 29 years. And it's only 24 hours that the Supreme Court is going to have. My point is this: we must strengthen the citizen, right? And therefore, there should be no room for the urgent bail provision. Otherwise, you had to bring in at least the post-enactment judicial review to balance it. If you don't have that, you shouldn't be having this. Coming to your question on the process, right? When the 19th Amendment was brought, there was a discussion on the process. There was criticism that even we were rushing through the 19th Amendment at that point in time. And Professor G.L. Pieris, on the 9th of April 2015, he made a speech in Parliament. And in the speech in Parliament, this is what Professor G.L. Pieris said, right? It's a long speech, but I will just read a few extracts. He said, I sincerely bring forward this proposal, not to get a political advantage out of this, right? Neither is this to put the government in trouble, right? මම නිහතමානී ලෙස යෝජනාවක් කරනවා ඒ දේශපාලන වාසියක් ගැනීමට හෝ රජයේ අසීරුතාවයට පත් කරන්න නෙවෙයි, right? මගේ අවංක අදහස මම ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා, my honest view, and he says, right? Then he says, මේවා ඔක්කොම එක ලියවිල්ලක අන්තර්ගත කරලා පිරිසිදු නිර්මල අංග සම්පූර්ණ ලියවිල්ලක් විදියට එය පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න. Because we gave the 19th Amendment, it went to court, then there were some changes in it, and he said that's not correct, because you're changing the amendment, there is no opportunity to go back to court and to again test it with the Supreme Court whether that's acceptable or not. Right? He says, එතකොට අපේ සමාජයට විශේෂයෙන්ම අපේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාල වාගේම අපේ හිතවත් මහාචාර්යවරුන්ට එම ලියවිල්ල කියවා බලා උසාවියට යනවද කියලා තීරණය කරන්න අපි මේ ක්‍රියාමාර්ගය අනුගමනය කළ යුතුයි, right? Then he says, right, his core criticism was about the process of the 19th Amendment. This government, in which he is the president or chairman of that political party, is saying openly that we have different views on the 20th Amendment, and they are tabling that amendment and they are violating the principles he himself has set. And then he says here, right, he's talking about the 19th Amendment. Mehi aramuna itama hondai. This is what Professor G.L. Pieris is saying about the 19th Amendment. Api kaurut piligannawa. යහපාලනයේ කොටසක් විදියට විධායකයේ අසීමිත බලතල සීමා කරන්න ඕනෑ කියලා. Professor G.L. Pieris says, I accept that the principles behind the 19th Amendment are good, and the unfettered powers of the presidency must be limited.
What is your point? You're reading excerpts of this.
I can give you the whole speech. I brought it. If you want, you can have the whole speech to make sure I'm not taking it out of context.
No, but what is the point at the end of the day?
So wait, අපි ඒක පිළිගන්නවා. 17 වන ආණ්ඩුක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථාවේ සංශෝධන අඩංගු වෙලා තිබුණු කොමිෂන් සභා යලිත් ස්ථාපිත කරමු. Right? හැබැයි අනාගතයේදී අභියෝගයට ලක්වීමේ අවදානක් නැති ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයක් අනුගමනය කරමු. He's talking here. He's saying, I agree with 19 because it's also bringing back some of the principles in the 17. But what his main point here is he's saying is follow the right process.
But he also says that it should not be challenged in future, and henceforth make sure that you bring forth an amendment that is long lasting.
Exactly. So now the question here is not only the details of the 20th Amendment. The question here is what the government is doing tomorrow. What the government is doing tomorrow is they know that there are different views on this. There are lots of debates going on, as we have heard, internally in the government, and they are still tabling the same 20th Amendments. So we can only debate that amendment. Then if we go to court and we challenge it, and there are substantial changes into that, then there is no opportunity to go back to court. And when it's passed, there is no post-enactment judicial review in this country. So this process is wrong. And Professor Peiris is right here in talking about it. But the problem in this country is we don't often practice what we preach.
But Dr.
All
Anand,
parties.
Yeah.
All
all parties
do that.
including the SLPP.
All parties.
So now,
Politics
now,
is- politics
now,
is-
yeah, now,
you got
now,
to-
yeah, now,
I don't want to
now,
disturb him
now
because I
I'm
disturbed him
saying,
already
yeah,
a couple of times.
yeah, now,
No,
but
but in this round you can disturb each other.
Okay.
You are allowed to do that, Dr. Raghavan.
We'll
Sir,
maintain
in
some
this-
decency, right?
Dr. Suren Raghavan, if I can pose one question to you, really.
Very quickly, I'll
Yeah, you
just
ask-
get to Dr. Anand
Sure.
and come back to you,
Right.
Masharan. Dr. Anand, the JP also drafted the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. You're well aware of that. When they were in power, they said there is a need to bring in a constitutional amendment. What is so different from that amendment to this that was tabled by the SLPP?
Actually, I can't remember exactly by that time because I didn't
Vijay
go
Gairat
to
was the one who
yeah,
championed the 20th
yeah,
Amendment.
20th Amendment, just to further strengthen
Yeah.
the steps that we have just proposed and initiated in 19th Amendment.
That's right.
Actually, all the provisions like were based on the basic principles of democracy, how best democracy can be strengthened. So, whereby the accountability and transparency to be increased. So, good example I can highlight, like even by that time there was a discussion about this procurement committee. Iran was just highlighting this also. Actually, it is a fact that there is a greater risk and chances are there the public the funds could be misappropriated. The independent procurement commission is a kind of tool that could some extent just stop. And by that time, together with the donor agencies, especially World Bank, ADB, JICA and all, they were just proposing to bring about the technology into this. So e-procurement and things like that. So even in our proposals, we were just talking about the possibilities of bringing technology into procurement. If you bring it then with an independent procurement committee, to great extent, either we can curtail corruption or even corruption happens, always you leave a track. So I do not know what happened. So even discussion, so I mean the prominence was not given for this discussion. Even now, by having that importance, the procurement and IT, if you just take it totally, I mean away, remove it, then you can't, I mean there wouldn't be any room left for us to talk about the misappropriation funds or the corruption. So everything would be legitimized in the name of maybe nation or doing something for the general public.
But very quickly, Dr. Anand, is that what the people want? Now, let's say, for an example, Sunil Hanunetti played a very important role in the
COPE.
Committee on Public Enterprises, which is
Yeah,
also
COPE.
known as COPE.
Yeah.
But he was not even selected to Parliament from the Mathura district. That is because the people did not want. Can I bring in that notion? Into
Yeah,
play?
I do not
think
know
that's a
because
right
we need to know.
analogy.
Actually, just I do not know that. That's
but
what
I
we.
like this debate, you know why? Because Dr.
Yeah,
Raghavan
that's
seems
the
to be
good
now
point
on
you
the
asked.
side of the opposition.
That's right.
Not on the side. I'm on the side of what is should be said.
Right.
It's not just defending a color or a party.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
must have a debate. We must have a discussion which enhances us, our knowledge and our moralities. I mean, we cannot just give up look. So that doesn't mean I agree with them. I mean, Hanunetti, I was here the last Satna program before. I wished him, Hanunetti, I wished him that he will win, but I said I doubt, because we are so good for what is happening right now in this country and in the globally. What we needed is not a person who will be so morally right, so ethical right, but not being
But
able
that
to deliver.
itself is a
So
that is a problem.
That
Dr.
is exactly
Raghavan.
the problem.
Problem of the democracy.
Invariably saying
I'm not
that
approving that.
let's-
I'm not approving
Yeah.
that. I'm saying
right, okay.
let's-
You're not approving it.
I'm not approving
Because
that. I'm
we
saying
don't
that
want
the global
thieves in
trend,
parliament.
Who on earth, knowing America's democracy, which funds? You know, the very first day we went to as newcomers to parliament, we were given a bag, with all the information and all. That bag was printed by USAID. So USAID promotes democracy even far remote island like Sri Lanka. But that democracy, we never believe a person like President Trump will be elected. But that happened. So the moving of the people, that's why I don't want to blame people. The moving of the people, your own question about, you talked about what, at the beginning you mentioned something
No,
about,
what is so
yeah.
wrong in USA giving a bag of goods to a newly elected members of parliament in Sri Lanka?
that shows our emptiness in our own way of funding ourselves to educate ourselves on democracy. And the more morally corrupt thing is to take money from America to teach democracy to us, which absolutely
But
has.
we are trying to
But
elect a dual citizen from the
Right.
US.
So that, don't take that away. I will talk about one day international law and foreign policy.
This was
actually,
so
yeah.
trivial that you just mentioned that you don't want thieves in parliament when we have convicted murderers in parliament.
Right, so I leave, because today is 20th Amendment to the Constitution, we are not talking about how thieves or murderers get into the Sri Lankan legislature. So, but I want to very quickly ask Dr. Anil Jain the question, and then I want to move to Charlotte. Sunil Hanurathy not being appointed, is that what people want? If so, the government has to cater to the people's needs and aspirations. And
do
that
not know
seems
whether
to be
that's like
exactly
whether,
what they're
yeah,
doing
do
right
not
now.
know whether that the people wanted it. This is what happened. So
How?
So I mean,
happened by people voting and voting
yeah,
out.
that's right. Yeah, that's the thing.
I mean, that's simple as that. I mean,
Yeah,
you have to
so-
accept that fact.
Yeah, that is a fact. So we have to accept it. But the role he played in the parliament, especially in the COPE, actually, so cannot be belittled because of this thing. I mean,
Yeah, that
he
we all
being
agree.
not
That we all-
elected. That is something. That is
That's
right.
not the question.
No,
That's
so
not
to
the
great
question
extent.
is,
Yeah.
such a good person
Yeah.
who on camera, off camera, was so good, and we all wanted a person like him to be in the parliament. But what had happened to him? Even deep down, Mathur, which had seen violence, which had seen poverty, which finally, I mean, some part of the Mathur economy, because I knew I was working closely with certain political leaders there. One time the Mathur economy was based on the war money. That was every home had a soldier working, right? And then it turned into every home had a funeral, like. You know, as such, so close to the national heart of the political situation, but does not vote for a person like Arun Reddy.
And they vote, and they vote
I'm
a
not saying
Rajapaksa
that is
family member
what
as
we
a
are
top
failing
notch
today.
in the
six of
Mathura
us are-
district.
7 of us are failing here, possibly, are to understand how does a country like Sri Lanka, which has the second or the third highest literacy rate, go like this? And that is, I think, the political question. But we can go on debating on these important things like this, but the fundamental basis is that these people are voting in and voting out, right? Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe, 40 years in power, and he was representing the Royal College, real English speaking urban in Colombo, 500,000 last year. You know what happened. So I think we all must discuss without, coming into this kind of.
Dr.
Nadir,
how
I
exactly-
don't think that like people have not really like not realized the importance of this thing. Like they may have, to great extent, so they may not have understood the role played by us, and again may have been,
therefore-
like, misled. So
we
to
need to
media,
create not
Dr.
good governance, we need to
Jayanta.
create good people. We
Dr.
need to
Jayanta,
create good people.
what if I pose it to you this way? Let's say, do you think that if it was the Sinua and not the compass, that the JVP would have fared better at this election?
from historical point of view, I mean I cannot comment on this thing because that didn't happen.
Do you feel that? Let me put it this. Do you
yeah,
feel that
from my
by
general understanding,
embracing, by let's say, some people view it this way, that the JVP
Had they
moved
contested,
away from their, let's say, socialist leanings
Yeah.
and has embraced a more liberal, progressive viewpoint through the Jatika Jana Balawina. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being liberal and progressive. What I'm saying is, do you think that sort of going against the tide has compromised not just the JVP, but also the liberal progressive factions that merged to form the compass?
No, I don't
That's a very
think.
good question.
Actually, yes. So the people may just come out with these different kind of opinion, of course. But as a member of NPP representing in Nayo, actually, I don't think that like had we just contested the symbol of the bell, we could have just increased our vote. I don't think so, because I personally know through our campaign, because we did a very good campaign, we were able to increase our vote base. At the same time, yes, I agree. So there is an erosion of some vote base as well. That's what it is not because that we were doing something wrong, but people may have this perceived that we were, even the media also contributed to that to some extent. We were labeled as a part of UNP, and of course to some extent especially by that time NPP was not there. JVP did a very big role by defeating then government in 2015. So
But Anukumar Dissanayake has said that he did not support Maithripala
no, I mean
Sirisena
that is, it is true that they did not directly support. I'm just telling that actions, actions.
JVP and FUTA are two movements just went against talking about exactly the beginning of all ends, like in 2014.
So the actions have contributed for that. Actions have contributed for that. But
if
the
you
thing was,
permit, I can.
1 minute. I'll just add one more thing.
What happened? The JVP's original vote base is the rural, young, educated person. But that was eroded completely from last 15 years, right? Coming with media, people getting more urbanized, and they're understanding the rest of the world systems. So, no, I'm not critiquing. I'm trying to understand what happened. So they try to move to semi-urban groups. I mean, allowing Vimal Katpayarachi to contest with his own material culture. You know what I'm referring to, the dark glass hanging from his pocket. This is not JVP's style. But they thought they can enter that market. By that time, that market has moved away from them. That's my
so anyway,
political scientist.
We'll keep this debate for another day.
Yes, that's my political scientist.
When we're not discussing about the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. So I
Dr.
want to,
Suren Raghavan, really my final question, I believe, in this round, because time's of the
make it
essence. Dr. Suren Raghavan, it was quite uneasy for me to sit here and wait, because I feel like I didn't get a clear answer to the first question that I posed. So I'm going to pose it to you again.
You may not get clear answers.
I'm going to pose it to you again, Dr. Suren Raghavan. Dr. Suren Raghavan, you were speaking about the Colombo elite, the Colombo semi-elite, and you were also differentiating them from the general public, who you called, people who wear sarongs, people who walk in their village with their bare feet. I like to think of myself as the latter category, as a person
the difference is you may be wearing the barefoot sarong. That's a.
Sir, let me finish my question. Dr. Suren Raghavan, please let me finish my question. So my question to you is, you were speaking about the Colombo elites and the fact that we are so against what the people want, or the Colombo elites are so against what the people want. But my question to you is, I find it as a person, who is in the latter category, I find it really, really hard to understand the logic behind the presentation of this 20th Amendment. And that's the reason why I posed that question to you at the beginning, so that we can simplify this. Because one of the main arguments that has been put forward by the government is that we need a strong government. That's what you said. And you said that the president has a plan, and the president cannot implement this plan without having the provisions in the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. All great, fine. So the Justice Minister came and said, when he was asked, what are these things that the president really can't do? He said, why, look at the IGP, look at the April 21st attacks. We couldn't change the IGP. Run it through a fact check, turns out that's wrong. That's not, there was nothing substantially brought in to removing a person from the position of IGP, and that's a 2002 piece of legislation. Statute. That was a different statute. So that argument is out. So my simple question to you is, what really can't the president do under the current constitutional provisions? Just, you spoke about the economy. You said we need to build our economy, but what? What in the building of the economy? Give me just one. I know it's a huge process. I don't expect you to, give me a detailed analysis of the entire thing, but just one thing that the president really can't do under the current provisions to the Constitution, and that the 20th Amendment would change.
Yeah, I think your question is fair. One must face, end of the day, and I was not trying not to answer that question from you. Though you said it's a simple question, you had a very complex forward to that. And I really believe this country, one of the major issues, I think Iran being here is good. One of the strongest parties in this country was the UNP. The fall of UNP is something that we must study from. A party that said Jati Pia created, the party that had all those things. What happened even in the 21st century, where people should have gone with the party, that kind of party which had that Western outlook or more liberal, let's say more liberal Western people. But what happened? It is because we are living in a country that is divided actually on the lines of urban and non-urban. It's not just parties. People go to parties, people vote that party and that region which addresses. So your question, I think we must understand. I am, as a political scientist, I'm saying the more we ignore this nation, the person who cycles in Jaffna and Allur with their body in Veti, the person who walks in Beliata or in Uva province without having any connections, though he or she may hear all these things that we are talking on TV, not this program, they don't listen to this program. This is again, this program, if you look at your program profile.
Dr. Raghavan, you're still not answering my question.
Wait, I'm coming to that. So if you look at this program, who listen to this program, you will know what kind of person I'm talking about.
Okay.
So that is not the world. That is not the world.
What
so
is the
your
world?
The answer to that is this government, this president, this prime minister is being bought by the people who are not from our world, our political world. And all what they need is, right now, they are willing to, as Iran has shown, all these tactics, all
Dr.
these...
Raghavan, I'm
Raghavan,
not really
just
questioning
hold
the
on,
mandate.
Hold on. Just let me simplify it. It seems to me that you're saying, because Zan's question is the same question that I was asking. What are the constitutional impediments? Doesn't matter. Let's say it's people from a different world, even from a different planet that brought the president, and that were from a different universe even. Regardless, what are the current constitutional impediments to the president delivering on the promises that he has made to the people that have voted for him? Because I don't see any. I don't see any impediments to the president upgrading the bicycle in Nallur to a motorcycle. I don't see any constitutional impediments to the president upgrading the normal sarong to a barefoot sarong in Uber. I don't see any constitutional impediment.
They need a Volkswagen car in Kurunegala. They are not asking for a gold chain across their neck.
No.
They are saying, give us a strong man
No,
who will
that's
take
but
this
what
country,
is the
give us a
constitutional
strong
impediment?
government
Yes, that's a
who can
political
take forward,
statement,
give us a promise, who a leader who will stand up and take this country forward.
But then, Dr. Raghavan, it seems that you're indicating that the president is really, because there is no constitutional impediment to delivering on the manifesto, by bringing in a constitutional amendment, the president is deceiving the public.
No, I don't think so. I mean, that's your interpretation.
Dr. Raghavan, what really can't the president do? My
there is no
question is very
impediment.
simple, Dr. Raghavan. I'm still waiting for an answer.
President, as you are imagining, President he's been voted in, 2/3 majority have been voted in. So, prima facie, President should be able to do all what he wants to do. But that's not
No, that's not right. That's not constitutional.
Within
That's not
within
correct.
Dr.
I want to
Suren
put
Raghavan.
this to...
You are questioning me now, right?
do
Iran, do you
have been
think
very
that the president has the right to do whatever he wishes to do?
Of course not, because everybody who holds public office, it's a trust given by the people.
Exactly.
And the trust has to be within the law. And in other countries, it's not just a written law, it's also tradition, precedent, and so forth. Often in Sri Lanka, that's not observed. So even the president has to be within it. So when we talked about the issue that came up earlier about the immunity of the president, every president is immune while in office on criminal and civil charges. And after they leave office, then they could be taken to a court of law. That is why Chandrika Bandaranayake had to be taken to a court of law. I wonder what's going to happen to Maithripala Sirisena. I wonder what's going to happen to the future presidents. What the 19th Amendment did was only that while in office, that if they violated the fundamental rights, somebody had the option of going to court while in office. But even then, the president himself doesn't turn up in a court of law. You see, that's just protecting the fundamental rights of the citizen. That's the intention of it. And basically they are removing that as well.
Right, so thank you very much, gentlemen. We go in for a quick commercial break. When we come back, It's a final round. Each speaker would get 4 minutes each to wrap up and summarize. You cannot bring in new arguments in the final round. If you all do bring in new arguments, we might have to go up until 12 midnight. So our intention is to finish by around 11:30 tonight. So we're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's the final round. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We are discussing about the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. The Gazette will be tabled in Parliament tomorrow, the first reading. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation, the final round. We move to Dr. Anil Jayantha, representative of the National People's Power. Your time starts now, 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Actually, this is a situation of believing and knowing. If simply the people believe that someone or a family or a party can develop a country, I don't think that such a situation may not lead to a better society, because simple beliefs to great extent could be based on some sentiments, or sometimes there may be the experience as well, but simple belief or the faith may not work in developing a good society. That is number one. So coming back to the present situation, this government is facing enormous challenges. So therefore government has no any other option but to preserve this particular economic system, since they are tied up with these neoliberal economic policies. So that is the reason why even this 20th Amendment, now we heard like even within their camp also there are some different opinions. They are debating about this thing, and finally there were some news articles even. So no one knows who drafted it, then who did it. So it is the system. This is this neoliberal economic system, but this government happens to protect it. So there are two fronts for this thing, because this is why the government wants the more power. One is, so within Sri Lanka, a kind of could be elite or a kind of class which is a part and parcel of the global economic forces are trying to acquire or put their economic bearings here. They could some of the incidences that we are seeing, maybe deforestation by setting fires and kind of just acquiring some economic crucial points, could be signals of paving the way for MCC, which is going to be signed of course in future, unless and until so kind of mass force that would come against this government, otherwise it is more likely. So at the end of the day, this neoliberal economic policy, so the capitalism has not been able, because which came with lots of promises of delivering the liberty and equality. Finally, it ended up with ending really. It has produced inequality, social unrest, and environmental damages. So many issues, and that threatens the sustainability. Even now we debate about 20th Amendment or present government mandate or maybe other petty issues. The world is also facing huge issues. One is the problem of artificial intelligence, which is going to be used for the benefits of handful people or for the general public. At the same time, the threats created by the nuclear weapons and all these things, global warming, and that's what the other part of the world, that is why the democracy, the other part of the world is talking about how best we enhance and strengthen democracy to bring about a better society. Now we are debating for something else. So we try to strengthen power for one individual, two individual, maybe the party, that is going to be highly destructive. Then there would be a contradiction, a conflict of interest between what people wanted, the people's aspiration, and what these, the party who is just representing the government. So that conflict would tell us where the government is going and what kind of situation or the outcome that general public would have to face. Of course, so these people will have to come forward and unite together to defeat this dying neoliberal capitalism system and to establish a society where everyone can live in peace and harmony, irrespective of all these petty differences in name of religion, nationality, or all those things. Then only we can hope for a better society.
Thank you very
we'll
much.
Work towards that one.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anil Jayanta, a representative of the National People's Power. We now move our attention to Iran Wickramaratne, Member of Parliament of the Samagya Jana Balawegaya.
In 7 weeks from today, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa would have been in office for 1 year. The question that we have to ask ourselves after we have voted in a new president, what has actually been accomplished? When you see the media, you often think like much is being done because politicians today, from Donald Trump to politicians in Sri Lanka, manage the media well and try to get their message across. However, all the people can't be fooled all the time. We really have to ask ourselves the question, what has been done? If you look at individuals and you look at homes, you look at families, right? Hundreds of thousands of people have lost their jobs, lost their income, lost their security. I know many Sri Lankans who have sent their children overseas, who have actually had to bring them down because they are not able to actually fund their education. If you look at the cost of living has really skyrocketed. Between September last year and September this year, almost every essential item has gone up between 20% and 175%. What solution has the government for it? If you talk to businessmen today, they have debts to pay to banks, to leasing companies, and they are unable to pay it. The government afforded a short moratorium, and that moratorium is coming to an end. What are they going to actually do when they have to start paying those debts without really having a cash flow? We have to also balance the interest of the financial system in the country. We must make sure that our banking system is strong. The attempt to throw away senior members of the central bank following the forced resignation of 2 members of the monetary board is a signal that the government thinks that the problems are to do with people. It's not to do with people, it's to do with the policies of this government and its economic policies and its processors, and not to do with people. Senior members of the central bank are now under attack as well. The government, instead of focusing on these issues, is focusing on the issues of trying to secure itself, to create an authoritarian presidency and authoritarian state, which is highly uncalled for because we have a strong presidential system. We agree that the government must take national security at the highest level. The failures of the past tell us that, and we as opposition will strongly support the government in taking strong measures in trying to destabilize the country. But that is what the government needs to do. But this government is going on the wrong way. Often we talk about a big mandate that this government or the president has got. He got 6.9 million votes, while Mr. Premadasa got 5.3 million votes. A difference, if you want, of 1.6 million votes or 800,000 votes, just flipping around. We have seen change in this country often. The impregnable United National Party presidency was changed in 1994. In 2001, Parliament changed. In 2015, a president who had given leadership to crush terrorism was also changed. And therefore, change is always possible because people in this country who are used to democracy use their vote wisely from time to time after reviewing what governments have done. Often, they vote governments out of power. The Samagya Jana Balawegaya, led by Sajith Premadasa, is a new political party with a new vision and going on a new journey. A new vision and a new journey. And we are certainly going to play a responsible role in opposition, preparing ourselves for the future.
Thank you very much, Iran Wickramaratne, Member of Parliament of the Samagya Jana Balawegaya. We now move our attention to Dr. Suren Raghavan, Member of Parliament of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna.
Thank you. I think Iran should be appointed as the propaganda secretary for at least another 10 years, because they are going to be in opposition for minimum 10 years, because what he just did was to give a lecture on Samagi Balavege. Thank you, Ran. I think you have that talent. Now, last 4 minutes, the last 2.5 hours, we've been debating and exchanging how this country should be democratically deepened and take forward so that we can be, Sri Lanka, our motherland, can be where she ought to be internationally and in regionally. Now, the challenges that we have are multiple. In 2019, when Gotabaya Rajapaksa came forward as a civilian to contest as for the position of 7th executive president of this country, he, as we all know, did not have a political party, did not heritage a leadership of a long, as compared to others who competed with him. So why did people decide to vote for him? And that is the question that all of us must again and again ask, even if it is bitter answers, even if it is producing bitter answers that we don't like to swallow. It is because a weakened and a broken economy, a weakened and broken security system, a weakened and broken international relationships were handed over to these people. It is just 4 years before, between 2015 and 19, 2 cabinet ministers had to resign from their post, none other than finance minister and none other than justice minister. And then of course they were reappointed as some. So people were looking, the kind of people that I was talking earlier, in their radios long into the Chenas and paddy fields, in their, maybe their TV stations late night, they were watching the drama that was happening in Colombo, and that culminated with Zahran Mohammad's attack on our nation and our people and our motherland. And that, I think, put the final nail on the coffin of people saying enough is enough. We are going to create, we are going to march towards, we are going to establish a government, a person, a people who will deliver. Now, you and I may not agree with some of those nuances, some of those styles, how it comes about and what it tries to do. Of course, nationalism is such a force, and that is why democratically elected people who voted for good governance, who took power in good governance, should have taken more care, because when the good fails, of course, what is left with is the non-good. So nationalism is a force to reckon, and that has come in Sri Lanka. What we have here right now operating is a deeply seated ethno-nationalistic, namely Sinhala Buddhist political ideology. Now this is necessarily not bad, because we are always trained to look at this from our Western, including me, from a Western perspective and template, saying nationalism is bad and religion and state should be separated and there should be absolute secularism in governance. In fact, very few countries in the world,
Thank you very
including,
much, Dr. Raghavan. Yes.
Oh, I just stopped me.
Yeah.
Therefore, I would say we are at an experimental stage, and that stage is mandated by the people, and I have faith in this country's voter that they will march towards, with democracy, with the necessary changes if they need to change.
Thank you very much, Dr. Suren Raghavan, Member of Parliament of the Sri Lanka Pudujana Peramuna. Thank you very much, Iran Vikramaratne, Member of Parliament of the Samagi Jana Balavege. Thank you very much, Dr. Anil Jayanta, National People's Power. Thank you very much, Dr. Suren Raghavan, for joining us this evening, because I know very clearly that you are a member appointed by the government, and henceforth you have to stick with the collective responsibility you have towards the government. And thank you very much henceforth for being very vocal and coming on the show tonight. So hats off to you.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Nadeem, and thank you very much, Shalan, for joining us this evening on the show. Sorry for getting your age wrong. 24-year-old Shalan Benedict, who is also a law student and the host of the show Role of Law. Am I right, Shalan?
Yes.
So who's your guest next, who will be talking about the 20th Amendment of the Constitution?
Well, this week we've got speaking about the environment, actually, and the environmental destruction and the laws that people can use, of course, to stop this environmental
Not the government.
destruction. No, we've moved a little bit away from the government. We've let the topic to you, Shamir.
Thanks a lot, Shalan. And I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do, as Miss Dr. Suren Raghavan spoke about Charles Taylor, the philosopher, when he spoke earlier on in the show. I thought I'll leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do, and this time some points to ponder to the government, again from Charles Taylor himself. Each of our voices has something unique to say, so listen. Take care and good night.